The ocean that night was so still it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Overhead, a thin silver moon poured light onto the black surface of the Formosa Strait. Down below, in a steel hull 30 feet beneath the waves, we waited, silent and patient. I pressed my hands against the cold periscope grips, forehead damp with the humidity that never seemed to leave the boat. Through the narrow lens I saw it, a faint silhouette cutting a dark line across the water. A Japanese destroyer, sleek and fast, prowling ahead of a convoy that didn't yet know it was already doomed. My name is Lieutenant Commander Richard Oka, commanding officer of the USS Tang. By the time this patrol was over, the enemy would remember this week as the moment their supply lines bled out. For us, it would be the longest and deadliest hunt of our lives. The sonar ping echoed through the control room, sharp, metallic, exact. It was our heartbeat down here. Every returning echo painted the outline of the ships we stalked, merchants heavy with soldiers, ammunition, oil, everything their empire needed to survive, and we were here to take it away. Contact bearing 090, range 8,000 yards, called out sonarman Floyd Caverly. His voice was steady, but I could hear it, the thin thread of excitement every submariner feels when the prey appears. I gave a slow nod. We have them. The control room shifted into practice silence. No shouting, no wasted motion. These men had hunted with me for years. Every light dimmed to red, every station locked into place. Tang wasn't just a submarine, it was a living machine, its pulse matching ours. The periscope's field revealed what the sonar had already whispered, a column of black smudges against the faint starlight. 127, a full convoy steaming southwest, escorted by 2 destroyers. Merchant formation confirmed, said my exec Frank Springer, leaning over the plotting board. Likely troop and supply transports. Destination, the Philippines. Then they're not getting there, I replied quietly. Take her down to 60 feet, I ordered. The bow tilted gently as Tang slid deeper into the dark. Above us, the convoy carved through the strait, unaware that death was gliding below. In the control room, the men moved like gears. No one needed reminding what came next. We'd done this dance before, too many times. Fire control plotted intercept angles, the torpedo room checked their fish, and the engine crew stood by on battery power. No noise, no mercy. For 2 hours we crept ahead, a silent shadow in the current. The lead destroyer swept its sonar forward, searching the wrong water. That was the beauty of patience. Predators waited, prey rushed. Tubes 1 through 4 ready, came the report from the forward torpedo room. Bearing mark, range mark, called the TDC operator. Convoy crossing our bow, broadside, perfect shot. The perfect shot, you never said it out loud, you just felt it, a current running through the steel walls. Fire 1, the deck trembled. Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4. 4 Mark 18 torpedoes streaked into the black at 46 knots, 4 weapons of cold, deliberate violence. Time to target, 2 minutes 40 seconds. The seconds stretched like rope about to snap. No one breathed, no one moved. In those moments, the world was reduced to a pair of hands on a periscope and the invisible trails of torpedoes cutting toward their prey. The first detonation ripped through the night like a thunderclap. A blossom of orange fire erupted just forward of the lead ship's bridge. Another explosion followed, midships. Steel groaned, then snapped. A merchant vessel folded in on itself like paper in a storm. The third and fourth torpedoes struck the second freighter, throwing up a column of water and flame. 2 targets sinking, I said flatly, not because I felt nothing, but because if I allowed emotion in now, it would drown me. The crew cheered, a short, raw sound quickly cut off by my raised hand. Destroyers will be on us in minutes, take her deep. The klaxon wailed softly, and Tang dropped like a stone into the dark. Up above, angry steel ships swept their propellers and sonar. The first depth charges splashed in. Then came the concussions, a soundless punch through water and metal. Light bulbs shattered, pipes rattled, the hull flexed but it held. We'd been here before and Tang was built to take the hits. Hold course, I whispered. They hunted us for half an hour, dropping charges in perfect, useless patterns. But the Pacific is wide, and ghosts don't stay in one place. Sonar reports no contacts, Caverly finally said. His voice carried that careful edge between relief and disbelief. Bring her to periscope depth. Tang rose through the layers of night water. When I pressed my eye to the scope again, the convoy was gone. In its place was an oil-slicked graveyard, twisted steel, floating crates, lifeboats half submerged in dark waves. 2 ships gone, thousands of tons of cargo lost, a first strike clean and precise. But I didn't feel triumph, not really. War had no victories that didn't come soaked in someone's blood. The sun rose slow and gray the next morning. We surfaced briefly to charge batteries, the cool wind hitting our faces like something from another world. The men stood on deck in silence, watching the empty horizon. Some smoked, some stared at nothing. This was just the beginning, Springer muttered beside me. He was right, Japanese convoys were moving in force, and Tang was only one hunter in a growing pack. More attacks would come, more steel would burn. But that night the first attack was the clean edge of the blade, no room for hesitation, no forgiveness, just a predator and its prey in the cold, silent dark. And I, Richard Oka, had chosen to be the blade. The radio room came alive just after dawn. A thin strip of gray light filtered through the conning tower hatch's Morse code chattered softly through the static. Caverly turned, headphones pressed tight, face pale with excitement. Intercept from USS Salian. Large enemy convoy, nor-northwest, 15 vessels, multiple escorts. The words landed like a hammer. A 15-ship convoy meant troops, fuel, ammunition, lifeblood flowing toward the Philippines. If those supplies made it through, they'd feed the Japanese war machine for weeks. If they didn't, they'd feed the sea. Set course 030. Flank speed, I ordered. Tang surged forward through the swells, diesel engines roaring for the first time in hours. The smell of fuel and metal filled the control room. Above the plotting table, Springer traced out the intercept. 3 hours if we run hard, he said. If they maintain course, they'll pass straight into the strait. Then we'll be waiting for them. The crew knew what that meant. This wasn't a small skirmish like the night before. This was a hammer blow, and every man on this boat was ready to swing it. 3 hours later, smoke rose on the horizon, thick, layered plumes against a washed-out sky. I climbed the bridge ladder, the wind tearing across my face as the horizon sharpened through binoculars. Then I saw them. The convoy stretched across the ocean like a steel centipede, 12 merchant ships in tight formation, their gray hulls cutting clean wakes. Around them prowled 4 destroyers, lean and fast, their sonar gear sweeping like watchful sentinels. 2 heavier silhouettes, cruisers, kept pace on the flanks. Biggest convoy I've ever seen, Springer muttered beside me. He wasn't wrong. Clear the bridge, dive, I called down. The klaxon wailed. Tang slipped beneath the surface like a shark disappearing into the deep, periscope depth in less than a minute. Through the narrow lens, the Japanese convoy loomed larger with each passing second. These weren't cargo scows. These were troop transports, passenger liners stripped to the steel, decks crowded with soldiers bound for the Philippines. 30,000, maybe more, men who would fight and kill American Marines if we let them land. This is it, boys, I said over the 1MC. Every torpedo we fire today will save lives on those beaches. No cheers, just silence, the kind that sits deep in the chest. We spent nearly an hour positioning for the kill. The convoy steamed at a steady 12 knots, oblivious to the shadow stalking beneath. The escorts wove in predictable patterns, sweeping their sonar too far forward, too shallow. They'd never find us. Tubes 1 through 6 ready in all respects, Chief Liebold reported from the forward torpedo room. Bearing mark, range mark, the TDC operator called out. Lead transport 5,000 yards, second and third aligned on same vector. Perfect geometry, one full spread could cripple the heart of the convoy. I wrapped my hands around the periscope handles and whispered to no one, let's finish this. Fire 1, the tube kicked. Fire 2, fire 3, fire 4, 5, 6. 6 torpedoes sliced into the dark. Each one carried enough explosive force to rip open a steel hull like paper. 3 aimed at the largest ship, 2 at the second, 1 at the third. Our fangs were in the water. Time to target, 3 minutes, 15 seconds. Minutes that stretched longer than any hour. I watched as the wake streaked straight toward the fat bellies of those transports. The first explosion bloomed beneath the lead vessel, a violent orange tear in the sea. Steel plates peeled back like tin. A second hit followed, midships sending a fireball arcing skyward. The ship began to list immediately, her bow dipping, stern rising as water poured in. The third and fourth torpedoes slammed into the second transport, cracking it in 2. Men tumbled from the decks like ants shaken off a stick. The fifth hit the third transport dead center. A blinding flash followed. For an instant, the night turned to day. And then the 6th torpedo found her mark. The third ship vanished in a white-hot detonation that ripped her magazine apart. The sound rolled through the periscope like thunder trapped underwater. One heartbeat, a ship. The next, twisted wreckage and falling bodies. "They're sinking," Springer said hoarsely beside me. "All three." I didn't answer. I didn't need to. On the control room deck, the men exchanged looks that hovered between fierce satisfaction and stunned silence. They knew what 30,000 soldiers meant. They knew what sinking them meant too. "Take her deep," I ordered. The klaxon moaned as Tang slipped down into the black. Above us, the destroyers reacted fast. Their bows swung hard toward the point of impact, sonar pulses spiking. They knew where we were now. "Depth charges incoming," Caverly warned. The first explosions raked the hull in rolling concussions. Equipment rattled, bolts screamed. One particularly close charge made my ribs feel like they'd been hit with a sledgehammer, but Tang held. "Hold depth," I barked. Springer's knuckles were white around the periscope well. Liebold's crew secured the torpedo room. We were inside the storm, and the only way out was to wait. 30 minutes, that's how long they hunted us. 30 minutes of explosions clawing at the hull. But the Pacific is vast, and rage doesn't find ghosts. "Sonar reports no contacts," Caverly finally said. "Take her up." Tang surfaced slowly, quiet as a breath. Through the periscope, I saw a black sea scattered with burning wreckage. 3 massive ships lay beneath it now, entombed with their cargo of soldiers and fuel. Lifeboats bobbed like matchsticks. That's when it hit me, not the tactical success, but the human weight. Those men had families, names, faces, and they'd be gone before the next sunrise. War didn't feel like glory, it felt like quiet. We ran silent the rest of the night, sliding away from the carnage like a shark fading into open water. Below decks, the crew whispered, voices low. Some celebrated quietly. Others just stared at the bulkheads, lost in thought. Springer joined me in the conning tower, arms crossed. "You did good, Skipper," he said. "No," I answered. "We did what we had to." There was no satisfaction in killing 30,000 men, but there was grim certainty. If we hadn't, those same men would be firing at ours in a week. The convoy of giants was gone, and with it, a piece of Japan's last hope. By the third night, the Formosa Strait had changed. Not on the charts, those lines and depth contours never moved, but in the way the sea itself seemed to hum with violence. The Japanese had once ruled these shipping lanes. Now, every ship that crossed them felt the cold breath of American submarines on its hull. "Message from Salmon and Salian," the radio operator said, handing me the decoded sheet. "They've hit 2 transports and a cruiser. Heavy damage." I unfolded the flimsy, the ink still damp. Our sister boats were out there, slicing the enemy's arteries in the dark. We weren't hunters alone anymore. We were part of something larger, 3 boats moving like one animal, tearing into the convoys Japan couldn't afford to lose. "Tell them Tang's still got teeth," I said. The men needed no speeches. They'd seen what our torpedoes could do. They'd watched the first 2 convoys sink into black water. Now every station felt sharper, every action faster. We were no longer just a submarine. We were the tip of a spear thrust straight into the Empire's chest. "Sonar contact bearing 045, range 12,000, Caverly called out. His voice was calm, practiced, but beneath it I heard the undertone we all felt, hunger. Springer leaned over the plot. Another convoy, smaller, moving fast, 4 merchants, 1 escort. "Probably trying to sneak through," I said. "They won't." The crew moved without needing direction. Liebold's men loaded the tubes. Fire control calculated courses and angles. Every step was a ritual burned into muscle and bone. Outside, the sea was still. Inside, Tang was a loaded weapon. We caught the convoy just after midnight. Through the periscope, I saw them clearly, 4 merchant ships cutting through the black, the destroyer ahead of them scanning the empty dark like a blind man waving a stick. They thought speed would save them. They were wrong. "Make your depth 60 feet. Ahead 2/3, I ordered. For hours, we shadowed them, positioning for the clean strike. Above, the destroyer kept searching, but its sonar sweeps were too narrow. It couldn't see the shadow on its tail. "Range to lead vessel, 6,000 yards, reported TDC. "Angle on the bow, port 30s. "Perfect." I exhaled slowly. Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4. 4 torpedoes leapt from Tang's tubes, their wakes invisible in the night. The destroyer continued its steady, ignorant patrol. For a moment, time held its breath. Then impact. The first explosion struck the lead freighter amidships. A column of water and fire tore upward, the sound punching through the hull even from thousands of yards away. The second torpedo slammed into the next ship in line, lighting up the night in a spray of orange flame. The third missed, white wake streaking harmlessly past the convoy as the ships began to scatter, but the fourth found its mark at the stern of another freighter, ripping the propeller clean off. 2 hits confirmed, 1 ship dead in the water, another sinking, Springer said, his voice tight with adrenaline. But this time the enemy didn't freeze. The destroyer swung hard, bow knifing through the sea, sonar pinging like gunshots. They'd seen the wakes. They knew where death had come from. "Take her deep, rig for depth charges." The world exploded. The first charges fell with precision too close. A thunderclap rolled through Tang's hull. Every bolt seemed to scream. Lights flickered. Somewhere aft, a wrench clattered to the deck. "Minor flooding in forward battery," the damage party shouted. "We've got it contained." The destroyer wasn't letting go. Charge after charge hammered us, each one closer than the last. For a moment, the steel beneath my boots felt alive, flexing, trembling, threatening to give way. I locked eyes with Springer. Neither of us spoke. We'd been here before. You either got through it or you didn't. "Hold her steady," I said quietly. Tang slid deeper into the cold Pacific. The charges grew distant, then distant turned to silence. "Sonar reports no pursuit," Caverly said finally. A breath I hadn't realized I was holding slipped out. We'd survived another hunt. When we came up to periscope depth, the horizon was slick with oil and burning debris. One freighter lay in pieces, its stern jutting from the waves like a broken tooth. Another was slipping under fast. The destroyer had chosen to save survivors rather than keep hunting us. "They're bleeding," Springer said softly. And they were. Convoy after convoy, the enemy was losing ships faster than they could replace them. Their supply chain wasn't just strained, it was cracking, and we were the hammer. But victory doesn't make men untouchable. In the torpedo room, Liebold wiped blood from his knuckles. A pipe had burst during the attack, splitting open his hand. He laughed it off, but I saw it, the exhaustion creeping in behind the adrenaline. War wasn't just steel and explosions. It was the slow wearing down of the men inside the steel. By dawn, reports flooded the radio net. Salient had sunk 2 more transports. Salmon had torpedoed a cruiser. Enemy traffic was frantic, confused. They were rerouting convoys south, scattering routes to avoid the wolf pack. It didn't matter. "They can run," I said, folding the flimsy, "but this ocean belongs to us." I stood at the periscope a long time after that, scanning the gray horizon. The sea looked calm again, almost peaceful, but somewhere below that surface, death was moving in silence. For the first time in the war, the Japanese weren't in control of their own supply lines. The wolf pack ruled these waters now, and Tang was its teeth. The sea had been too quiet all day. No chatter on the radio net, no distant sonar echoes of convoys, just endless black water sliding beneath Tang's hull. When the ocean goes silent like that, it isn't peace. It's the pause before the blade falls. "Contact," Caverly finally whispered from his station. "Bearing 310, range 10,000, fast movers." I straightened, the fatigue of long hours at periscope depth evaporating. How many? 4 merchants, 1 escort, speed 15 knots. "They're running," Springer said, trying to make a dash through the gap. "Not today." We were down to our last few torpedoes, but this was why they were loaded. 1 more strike, 1 more convoy ripped open. We stalked them for over an hour, matching speed but holding distance. The Japanese had learned. Their formation was tight, the escort sharp and alert. Sonar sweeps were faster, more aggressive, their destroyer captain clearly jumpy after days of losing ships to unseen predators. "Range 6,000, course steady," TDC reported. "Depth 60 feet, ahead 2/3, I ordered. The hum of the electric motors was the only sound in the control room. The men were exhausted but coiled, every one of them running on instinct now. After weeks of this, the hunt was in their bones. Through the periscope, the convoy cut across the moonlit sea, leaner than the giants we'd sunk earlier, but no less important. The lead ship was a big freighter, probably carrying ammunition or oil. The second looked like a troop transport. Behind them, 2 smaller supply vessels followed in line. Fire 1, Fire 2, Fire 3, Fire 4. The last 4 torpedoes surged out like silent wolves. For a moment it felt perfect, same rhythm as all the strikes before. The wake patterns were clean, the angle right, the convoy steady. Then the lookout on the lead ship must have spotted something. A single signal flare arced upward, and everything erupted into motion. "Convoy scattering," Springer shouted. The destroyer swung hard toward us, sonar pinging like a hammer on steel. The merchants heeled over, trying to outrun death. 2 torpedoes streaked harmlessly into empty water. But not all of them. The 3rd torpedo slammed into the side of the troop transport, ripping through its hull in a burst of fire and steel. The 4th struck the last freighter in the stern, breaking its back but not sending it down. 2 kills had been the plan. 1 kill and 1 cripple was the reality. "Escorts charging straight at us," Caverly barked. "Take her deep, all ahead, emergency." Tang dove fast and hard, the destroyer followed. The first depth charge landed, almost directly above us. The blast hit like a sledgehammer, slamming me against the periscope well. Somewhere aft, glass shattered. The lights flickered and died. Emergency lighting flickered on red, dim, claustrophobic. "Flooding in forward battery," someone yelled. The boat groaned under the strain, bulkheads flexing. It wasn't just noise, it was the sound of steel deciding whether or not it would hold. "Get that flooding contained," I snapped. "On it." The second salvo hit closer. This time the deck pitched, throwing Springer into a console. His shoulders slammed hard, but he was already dragging himself back up, breathing like a bull. The destroyer captain was good. His patterns were tight, relentless. No wild guessing, just systematic destruction, boxing us in. Time lost all meaning. There was only the rhythm of the blasts, the groan of metal, the choking smell of battery acid from a cracked vent. Men held their breath after every detonation, waiting to find out if the next would be the last thing they heard. I caught Liebold's eyes through the gloom. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. We all knew what the line between survival and sinking felt like, and we were standing on it. Then, finally, silence. No more sonar pings, no more detonations, just the creak of Tang's hull and the pulse of the sea. "They've turned away," Caverly said at last, probably rejoining the convoy. I leaned back against the periscope well. Sweat rolled down my temple and into my collar. It felt cold. Everything felt cold. "Bring her up slowly," I ordered. "Periscope depth, no noise." The periscope broke the surface like a ghost. Through the lens, the convoy was nothing but a smear on the horizon. The crippled freighter burned behind them, tilting hard, its stern already kissing the waves. The transport we'd hit was gone entirely, just oil and scattered wreckage floating in the moonlight. We had survived. But this one hadn't been clean. It had been teeth against teeth, and it had reminded every man aboard Tang what it really meant to hunt in the dark. Later, when the ship steadied and the pumps cleared the last of the water, the men sat in silence. Some smoked, some stared at nothing. The adrenaline had burned away, leaving exhaustion behind like the ash at the end of a fire. "Could have gone worse," Springer muttered, shoulder bandaged now. "Could have gone a lot worse," I said. He nodded. "They're getting smarter." "Yeah, but not smart enough." The Formosa Strait was still ours, but it was fighting back. When I returned to the control room, Caverly was already back at his station, scanning the void. Liebold was wiping dried blood from his forehead with a rag. Nobody asked for a break. Nobody needed orders. They just reset their stations. That's what submariners do. They don't wait for the fear to fade. They work through it. Outside, somewhere miles away, the destroyer was tending to its wounded convoy. We had no torpedoes left, but they didn't know that. All they knew was that a hunter was still out here, somewhere below their keels, watching. The message came just before sunset. A sharp rap on the bulkhead, then the radio operator's voice cut through the stale air. "Flash intercept from command. Enemy task force massive. Carriers, battleships, cruisers. Northwest approach. All submarines, intercept and engage." The room fell silent. We'd spent weeks gutting convoys, soft targets. This was different. This was the beating heart of the Japanese Navy, the kind of fleet they'd once believed would rule the Pacific. "Set course 270, I ordered. Flank speed." Tang surged forward, diesel engines rumbling like a storm. Above the control room, the plotting board filled with converging lines. We weren't alone out here. Salian, Salmon, dozens of other American boats. A wolf pack not hunting freighters this time, but giants. They're bringing everything they've got, Springer said, his voice low. Then we'll give them everything we have left, I answered. 6 hours later, the enemy fleet appeared on the horizon. Even through the periscope's narrow frame, it took my breath away. 4 aircraft carriers, their decks crowded with planes, battleships behind them, cruisers in escort columns, destroyers in a loose outer ring, a formation so vast it seemed to swallow the ocean. Clear the bridge, dive. Tang slipped beneath the waves, silent as a knife sliding into flesh. The fleet didn't even know we were here. Sonar reports 40 contacts, multiple warships, Caverly called out, bearing 285. This is it, Springer whispered. I tightened my grip on the periscope handles. This is it. For 2 hours we shadowed them, weaving through the destroyer screen like a ghost. Their sonar pulses raked the sea, but they were casting their net too wide. We slid through the gaps, closing the distance inch by inch. Range to nearest carrier, 8,000 yards, the TDC operator reported. Angle on the bow starboard 60. It was a perfect broadside, big, vulnerable, gliding forward like it didn't know the ocean itself had turned against it. Flood tubes 1 through 6, I ordered. We didn't have many torpedoes left, but we had enough for this. Bearing mark, range mark. I locked eyes with Springer. He nodded. No more words were needed. Fire 1. The deck shuddered. Fire 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 torpedoes streaked toward the carrier, the soundless promise of ruin. Time to impact, 4 minutes, 20 seconds. The longest 4 minutes of my life. Above us, the carrier cut through the water in perfect confidence. They always thought they were untouchable. They had never met Tang. Then the ocean bloomed. The first torpedo struck forward of the island, sending a geyser of fire and steel high into the night. The second slammed amidships. The third and fourth tore through the stern. The fifth struck the aviation fuel bunker. The explosion that followed split the night in half. The shockwave rolled through Tang's hull, a deep, resonant roar that made every bolt vibrate. Through the periscope, I saw the carrier engulfed in fire, planes tumbling from its deck like burning leaves. The ship began to list sharply, flames pouring from its hangars. Carrier hit multiple impacts. She's going down, Springer said. But the 6th torpedo sealed it. One last bloom beneath her keel, and the great warship folded, twisted, and began her final descent. Scratch 1 flat top, I said quietly. For a moment the control room erupted, a raw, unrestrained cheer. We had done what most submarines only dreamed of, sunk a carrier. But the celebration didn't last. The destroyers were already turning. Depth charges incoming, Caverly shouted. Take her deep, rig for attack. The first salvo fell fast. The concussions were merciless, shaking the hull like a drum. Equipment clattered. Men braced against bulkheads. One blast slammed so close I felt it in my teeth. But something had changed. This time they weren't hunting a shadow that had nipped at convoys. They were hunting the ghost that had just ripped the heart out of their fleet. For an hour they tried to kill us. For an hour we lay still, slipping deeper into the black. When the pings faded and the sea went quiet, every man aboard knew what we had done. 1 carrier gone. Dozens of planes gone. Hundreds of trained sailors gone. The war had tilted another degree toward its end. We surfaced in the early hours, the ocean flat and cold. In the distance, the horizon burned with scattered fires. Other submarines had struck too. Salmon hit a cruiser. Salian crippled a battleship. The Japanese fleet was limping, their once mighty navy bleeding out into the Pacific. Radio message, the operator called. From subpack, mission accomplished, return to base. For the first time in weeks, I let myself exhale. We had nothing left to fire, nothing left to give. Set course for Pearl Harbor, I said. The engines came alive, carrying us east, away from the wreckage we'd made. The journey home was quiet, not calm, just quiet. In the forward torpedo room, Liebold was counting empty racks. 24 torpedoes had left Tang's tubes on this patrol. 24 strikes, dozens of ships, thousands of lives ended. Some of the men talked about medals, others about the faces they imagined on the enemy ships, not out loud. Never out loud, but I could see it in their eyes. Springer joined me on the bridge the morning the sun broke through for the first time in days. The wind was crisp, clean. It didn't smell like war anymore. "You should be proud, Skipper," he said. I watched the horizon. Pride doesn't fit in a torpedo tube. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. When we reached Pearl Harbor, the sun was high and bright. The docks were crowded with faces, crewmen, officers, mechanics. News of what Tang had done had already traveled, but as we tied up, I wasn't thinking about the cheers. I was thinking about the men beneath the waves, the Japanese sailors who would never go home, the Americans from other boats who never did. Wolf packs didn't always return whole. War isn't made of victories, it's made of absences. We stepped off the gangway one by one. The crew was tired, dirty, unshaven, but their eyes carried something that couldn't be washed off, the knowledge that we'd changed the course of the war. The Japanese fleet had been broken, their merchant lines strangled, their carriers sunk, all from beneath the waves. The Tang had no grand speeches to give, just silence, and the echoes left behind in the dark Pacific.